Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Battle Buddy Podcast. I've got an awesome guest today. If you are in the tech space, or you're looking for a job, or you're looking to get a little bit more out of LinkedIn, this is the episode you're going to want to check out. So without further ado, I'll bring our guest in today, Joshua Prado. So Josh, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. What was your military journey?
Oh, wow. 10 years in the Navy. I was active duty, then reserve, post 9/11. Spent most of my time in air wing squadron units, so on the aviation side, and working with ComNav weapon systems on F-18s and on some helos here and there. So pretty much sums it up on the about 10 years worth of Navy time.
Awesome. So you are in the tech space. Get your exact recruiter, right? Is what your title is, something along those lines.
In summarization, mostly talent acquisition program management. So recruiters technically are matchmakers for job openings. Talent acquisition more deals with the strategy of creating pipelines, retention, both sourcing, screening, and making sure that the workforce is molded where it needs to be, especially with the military recruiting program. So I would say talent acquisition management more so than recruiting, but it's a great episode for the recruiters, those that want to get into that space, because there's a great need for talent in the, especially in the tech workforce, obviously, cleared talent, non-cleared talent for the commercial sector.
That's exactly why I wanted to ask that, just to clarify for people who would listen or watch in the future, and to kind of know exactly where you sit in that space. Because I know, obviously not everybody's in the hiring pipeline for jobs and stuff like that. But one of the things I wanted to ask you was, some of the top resume tips, just in general. And then, is there anything for those people who are looking at somewhere in the tech space?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing in regards to resumes is to reference the job that you're applying for, and making sure that you create a targeted resume for the specific job. Imagine you're going to a party and you don't know if it's a black tie event or it's a casual thing. So every single resume should be tailored to that specific job. It takes a lot more work, but it's better to have a tailored and targeted resume for 3 jobs than a blanket resume for 20 jobs that you're applying for. So the more the customs fit to yourself and the company that you're trying to add value to. Also, resumes are, like I said, reflective of yourself towards a specific position. Marketing yourself in general is going to be a lot more broad than that. That's why we use LinkedIn. That's why personal branding is huge. So not just the resume, focus, maybe 20% on the resume, and I'd say maybe 30%, more on your LinkedIn and your network, both the people that and the people that you should know. That's kind of like my bit on recruiting and resumes, LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And I'm going to dig way back here a little bit and kind of go back to my college days and think about the resumes and HR classes and stuff that I had. You should be, to get the targeted resume, you should be finding that job description and pulling, correct me if I'm wrong, keywords out of there for that. They put the recruiters or whoever's putting those job descriptions together is using those for a reason, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. There's not like you're writing essays in college, you get in trouble for plagiarism. But if you're doing resumes for a job, if you put the exact words and keywords and things in there, essentially that's actually a good thing. That's actually going to catch the eye of the recruiters or the hiring managers, that you actually have exactly what they need. It's not writing an essay, so you do get to do that when it comes to resumes. You want to be the essentially one of the perfect matches for what they're looking for, either 90% or more qualified for the position that you're applying for. That's kind of a general rule of thumb, I would say, that goes across the board.
Okay, that's interesting. 90% or more qualified. So if somebody's out there looking at a job description and they're thinking, maybe I qualify, maybe I don't, they should maybe look at that and say, if there's 10 things on there, if I'm like legitimately qualified at 9 of them, I have a pretty good shot at maybe applying for this, putting in the resume. If it's only 50%, maybe you should look a different direction.
Absolutely. I think a lot of folks say this term like I'm overqualified for this role, but I mean, technically, has that person or do they do the work to actually take a job description, potentially break it down into a scorecard, meaning that like if there, it says required, I have a bachelor's degree, do I have that? And if that's worth 10 points, would I get those 10 points? So, when somebody says, oh, I'm overqualified for this or underqualified for that, a lot of times they actually haven't done the work to actually break that down into a metric system and truly say, hey, I'm actually the top 10% for this position. Sometimes that's just a general rule of thumb. They think that, a job is above or below their qualifications, but, that's the science of talent acquisition and recruiting is actually breaking that down and saying, yeah, these are my top 3 candidates based on, here's a report that shows that this is my top 3 because it's difficult. There's a lot of qualified folks that are out there, and what are the key differentiators between your top 2 or 3 candidates?
You actually just said a word in there that I want to pinpoint. You said science, and I am definitely no resume expert. No, not an interviewing expert, but that's what I've picked up over time is that it's a science. Like you need to pick it apart and you need to be very strategic and tactical with exactly what you're putting in your resume. And you just can't just go on your computer on Word and just slap something together and hope it's going to work. You're not going to have much of a chance of success with that without putting a little bit of thought into it. Kind of a scientific method, I guess. With those tech resumes, is there anything in particular for people focus on the tech space because that's where you're at? Is there certain things that that are generally going to be a really big bonus for people to have on their resume?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. Industry recognized credentials make a big difference, especially for DoD contracting. If you are, you might do a Udemy or even a LinkedIn learning course for Security Plus, which is like a mandatory DoD, type certification for IT. You want to get the actually industry recognized ones. For example, CompTIA is recognized as like a college credit. It's also recognized as an industry certification. So even though you might have some training in that, you do want to leverage, especially for us veterans or transitioning military, leverage your VA benefits of any kind to make sure that you have the credentials that match for those, especially for those IT roles. So there for specifically tech, there's CompTIA, EC Council, a number of different industry certifications. Obviously, for our program and project managers, there's PMI, PMP certifications that are industry recognized that actually increase your kind of market value and are also recognized in the industry, not just as like free stuff. There's plenty of information you can glean from YouTube and from free services, but to get the industry specific stuff, we have at our advantage a lot of VA resources to get, to pay and get the legitimate, certifications that we need.
That's a good point to tie in the VA GI Bill stuff or what's the other one off the top of my head? The Vocational Rehab, or I think they call it something else now, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about.
We call VR and E now, not instead of Voc Rehab. Yeah.
You know what? Voc Rehab is just easier to say.
Correct, I suppose.
Who cares about that? We don't do politically correct. We're veterans. but either way, like, yeah, use your benefits and go back and get some of those. Because I think that, if you really look at the education benefits, you can get pretty creative with some of those things. I know in real estate, like you can, at least in the state of Illinois, you can use your GI Bill benefits to go to a real estate school and do the pre-licensing stuff to go get your license. So, I'm sure that a lot of those different courses that you mentioned, there's some way to pay for it other than forking money out of your own wallet. So good stuff to look into. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about that you had mentioned before when we talked was being the top 10%, that short list. Is there anything like outside of qualifications and other things that help somebody get in that top 10%, other than, hey, they've got this class, they've got that class, they got these qualifications?
Absolutely. That's going to be, there's 3 things that I tie into my transition strategy. I've, specifically made it a point to drive veteran employment initiatives across the U.S. and different companies, especially within tech, And I have three specific areas that I always say to work on. One is the people, two is the products, and three is the process. So product would be your industry certifications, your product knowledge, how you're going to build value technically. The other way to tilt the scale would be in the people area. So people, I mean, once again, who you know does matter, because especially if somebody is referred to me through somebody I know, let's say you sent somebody over, that gives me a reason to potentially look at something or look into something a little deeper than I normally would, if I'm specifically trying to fill that position. So it is who you know, and especially with the military recruiting space, we've built programs to specifically recruit veterans for specific jobs. So we want them to be there. How to kind of tip the scale and move the machine in your direction would be to get to know who those military recruiters and programs and resources are, and start to find the people that you need to know, whether it's for tech or for real estate or any industry. Kind of the same formula applies.
Yeah, it makes sense. I actually just, ironically, last night just finished up Darren Hardy's book, The Compound Effect. And he actually had a chapter in there where he kind of talked about that. Is like, if you're going to look for a job, you need to research everybody at that company, not just the people in HR. You need to know everything you possibly can about the CEO, the CFO, all the leadership, the board of directors. You need to walk in there with all that knowledge in the back of your mind. You need to know who they are, what their qualifications are, how they got to their job. You should at least research that stuff, and get a better idea. That tells you the culture and how people got in their positions. And then if you can connect with those people on LinkedIn, which is, the next topic I kind of wanted to talk about was, you might be able to get that personal connection. You might realize that you've got a second, what is a second or third or whatever connection, whatever they call it on LinkedIn, right? Where you see somebody, you're like, oh, it's cool. I got 5 different connections with them.
I mean, whether it's right or wrong, I mean, if you go to a restaurant and you know the chef and the GM and the servers, and you're friends with, the multiple people on the staff, I mean, there's a slight chance that you get a different experience than if you don't know anybody at the restaurant, right? So, I mean, it's kind of a, I think real world analogy for, why it's good to connect via LinkedIn or build those relationships over time is the same thing, whether it's a, restaurant analogy or a sports analogy. I think that kind of sums it up for, you get treated well, if you know the chef and you know the server and you know the host and the bartender, it's a much different experience than it's your first time and you're just like, you come into the restaurant and you want a good meal.
That's a good way of putting it. If you know a couple people there, might get a couple extra breadsticks or a little bit extra wine in your glass or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of truth to it. A lot of it's who you know. So, but one of the best places to get known or to make these connections is LinkedIn. And I would certainly hope that a lot of my listeners are familiar with LinkedIn. I know I use it all the time for this podcast specifically. Actually, every guest that I've ever had on, I've looked up on LinkedIn. I won't say all of them have been on there, but it's a helpful resource for me, just for my guests, to understand what their history is, their education, what their current position is, things like that. And I look at it from research perspective. So I know if I'm using it, hiring managers are using it, everybody's using it. There's a lot of conversations going on all the time. So, but one thing I've noticed, I'm sure you've definitely seen this, some people are just really bad about filling out their LinkedIn profiles. They've got no photo, they've got no background image, they've got hardly any background information. What do you think are the best ways to stand out on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. I mean, number one is going to be aesthetics. This is a rare case. It happens to be a Saturday in sunny San Diego, so I'm not in a suit and tie, or I'm actually my 511 tactical gear to shout out our veteran-owned businesses there. But I'm over here at my office in downtown. But technically, I mean, if you find somebody on LinkedIn, especially now in the remote world that we live in, the first thing that's going to catch your eye is, I may not have a chance to have pulled your resume. I may not have a chance to look into there, but there's a number of resources, and the fact that we've got great, amazing iPhones and, cameras nowadays, it should be pretty easy to make sure that you got a suit and tie headshot set up there for the guys. And, formal attire for the girls as well on LinkedIn. So headshot. Also, there's a big amount of real estate when it comes to the like a background wallpaper type thing you can set up there. That you do have freedom to kind of change that as you want, whether using it kind of like as a backdrop for information or maybe just kind of a cool sunset from the city that you live in. But for whatever reason, that's some other customizable branding that you can add to your profile. So once again, it's when you present yourself online, digital, in the LinkedIn template. You can always, have a very complete or a non-complete profile on the flip side. So just working on that constantly. I think that LinkedIn's done great to not have a general, like, this is the standard, you have to do it. There is some gray area and some wiggle room, which I kind of like because it allows you to be yourself and project the image versus, staring at a black and white resume. It says, John Smith, whatever, you see black and white, and that's it. But when you go to LinkedIn, I might be like, okay, this person likes the companies that I like. They've got some similar interests. They present themselves well. Obviously for military guys, make sure you're not in your military uniform because that does not apply anymore in the civilian, workspace, even though, we do recognize as, a veteran myself and fellow veterans, we recognize the work that you did in the service when you're out. Your jobs provide value as a human being, not necessarily based on your rank and rate structure. So I get the ability to it's a blessing to be able to work with retired, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, captains, all these people with great accolades, all the way down to someone who's done a 4-year, enlistment and, was a infantry guy or a cook or whatever. And we're all the same in this space now. Whether, you and I were a different branch or rate rank or anything like that, at this point, we're just in an amazing way, we're brothers and sisters, and we look out for each other, and that's it. Our job is to serve the community after our time in uniform. And I love what you're doing, and anybody that's like you, because it gives you that sense of purpose that you need on top of whatever your civilian career is.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it's a reset. Whatever your rank was, your title, any of that stuff, it doesn't really matter. Once you leave the service, you are on your own. You're back in the civilian world. I like to say, hey, you joined the Cool Kids Club. Welcome to the Veteran Club. We're all in this together. Thousands of millions of veterans have come before you and gone through the same process. So anybody can do it, but you have to play
It
by
eliminates the
rules.
barrier. It eliminates the barrier, which, good and bad. There's still, there's the, you got the Chiefs mess in the Navy. You've got the soft community. You've got like Annapolis, Academy guys. You got all those different kind of clubs and communities in the military, which are great, and just for camaraderie and everything. But that actually comes down when you're entering the civilian workforce. Obviously you might be like, hey, that guy's Navy and I'm Navy, or this guy's Marine, I'm Marine, or that guy's Recon and I'm this and that. So you might have a familiarity with them, but at the same time, like I said, so anyone who signed a contract and served, I think that from the civilian perspective, we treat each other and try and serve each other exactly the same.
Absolutely, because most of the time you don't even know. I mean,
yeah,
you might see someone with a veteran.
There's a bunch of E4 mafia out there, and there's a bunch of Annapolis grads and all that stuff. But essentially, if you got the right credentials and you do meet those qualifications, whether hard skills or there's a ton of soft skills that we bring, obviously, then you're going to be in the same category when it comes to where you stand in military recruitment eyes, at least in my eyes.
Absolutely. So with the LinkedIn, like, what are some of the best ways that you see people utilizing that beyond just having their profile look aesthetically pleasing? Have you seen anybody like really in practice, really utilizing LinkedIn to their advantage to get a job?
Yeah, one of the first things I ask when I'm having conversation with any of the transitioning or upskilling candidates is do you have the LinkedIn app on your phone? Like, I mean, you're probably on Gmail and Instagram and all this other stuff, but I mean, if you're using something, you have quick access to it. So get the LinkedIn app on your phone so you can use it readily and you can start doing connections. If you're actually actively networking, top out and say, hey, there's 100 connections that I can connect to per week. which means that's 20 a day for, 5 days of the week. And, whether it's, I like that company there, let me connect to their whole recruiting team, or maybe these are some people that I need to know, and, drop down the list. If you're not hitting the cap on that, on a weekly basis, then you can't really say, man, I've done everything that I can to get a job and all that stuff. And then, my question would be like, have you? Well, or, I mean, what is the cap? What's the ceiling on that? Is it how many people on LinkedIn you're connecting to, how many jobs you've applied to? And once again, I'd say quality over quantity. If somebody says I applied to 100 jobs, I'm not getting any response, then the conversation I have, then leads to, well, let's take a look at that and see maybe particularly why. Oh, you don't have a headshot, or LinkedIn's not complete, or there's something going on other than the fact that you're applying for the jobs. That's one thing.
Yeah, I think if somebody says that they've applied for 100 jobs and they're not having any success, we all have skills. Every single one of us has skills. And with the great resignation, or whatever it's been called here, has happened over the last couple of years, there's jobs out there. There's plenty of jobs out there. You just got to be able to find that right one and have your skills match up, and you just have everything aligned, and just stop throwing, don't go to Staples and have 100 copies of your resume made and just toss them in the wind and hope somebody picks it up and hires you, because it's not going to work.
Yeah, and in the digital space that we're in, it allows you to create a personal brand for yourself, to where you may not be that's all about timing as well. If a job is open and you see a posting and you're applying for the job, I mean, most likely is that something that they hire for multiple times throughout the year. There's the timing of everything is important, because it might not be that you have all the skills for a job that just opened today and you're the top candidate and everything lines up within that week's time. So to get in, there's an active and a passive pipeline for, recruiting and jobs and careers and all those things. So to be in the passive pipeline, I mean, you may need to connect to that person that's going to open the job 6 months from now for you. So, it's not like you only apply when you only go to the store when the store is open, from 8 to 5. You want to be actively engaged there with the person or the organization, not just when the doors are open.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you just never know when that opportunity is going to knock, and you better be able to kick in that door when the opportunity is there. And that's something I have not been in the job seeking phase for many years now, but that's something I really didn't think about, honestly, was the fact that you've got jobs that are trying to be filled right now, and then you have other jobs that are like, well, we always want to have a pool here to choose from because we have high turnover, or we're expecting it, or something, or maybe a new facility coming online and we got to start ramping up. It's just like the military. I mean, you're going to have that vacancy right now. That's mission essential. Like, you got to fill that. You have an accounting department of 3 people and 2 of them have left the company. You have an immediate need to fill 2 accounting spots. Like, you need that immediately. But if they're all full and somebody's getting ready to retire, maybe 6 months or a year, a couple of years before they need something. So they put it out there to attract interest just in case. Trying to paint a good picture there. So the last question I had here, and I'm going to throw, before we do, I'm going to throw your link up at the bottom to your website. It's vetdtalentnetwork.co, and you've got a ton of resources on there. So everybody should definitely go check that out. On a variety of different resources, which is
awesome.
short
for vetted. So I know.
Vetted. Okay. I wanted to say it like that so the listeners would know.
Yeah. No,
if I said vetted, they might put an E in there somewhere.
True. And there is another organization by that same name, different outputs, but yeah, it's Victor Echo Tango Delta. So you can see it there on the drop down. And what that represents is that I put together an initiative to create like a platform for transitioning veterans and retired and whoever's out there that's looking for resources. I'm constantly doing collaborations with multiple organizations and kind of shortlisting, just like I would candidates, my favorites, and not only just ones that have a high output. Like if you go to the podcast section, we're going to see Battle Buddy podcasts on there. You'll see Jocko podcast and some of the other familiar resources when it comes to what should I listen to, who should I connect to, what different resources I might need, so it's not a storefront for everything, anything and everything. The purpose is to be more of a short list always taking recommendations and collaborations with different partners as an ongoing thing because the landscape is changing. There's a ton of different new resources that come out that change the game, even technologically. So for 10 years ago, getting out of the military, I came out of active duty originally in 2007. I don't think we had a Veterati. We didn't have this online digital mentorship platform that ports to your LinkedIn. We didn't have, there might have been some other, obviously, mentorship resources, but there's some that kind of changed the game. And so I'm always on the lookout for that. But, I built it based off of the problem statement of something like myself when I got out of the military. At the time, no degree, enlisted, no real skill set aside from the electronics hard skill background from the military. Now, what's my next step? Where can I go? So I built the platform and the organization based on that profile, which is many people across the U.S., getting out looking for their next step. They're looking for who do I connect to, what programs should I select, what resources, what is the strategy, because at the upper echelon of what we're doing in talent acquisition or training or employment, we're trying to be strategic. Obviously, your operational tactical mindset is what I need to do to survive today and pay the rent and get a job and all that good stuff. But when in terms of the upper echelon of what we do is try and think strategically. How do I have an optimal experience after the military in my next chapter, in a fulfilled career with the right resources, with the right people, with the right community. I think that Vetted Talent Network serves as a resource for that. So you can go to the website, you can go to the Facebook and the Instagram. More likely, engage with me personally, either on LinkedIn, through the website, or for the post 9/11 crowd and the next generation are on Instagram and those types of things. But so we're across most platforms, but either way, and it is an extension of what I felt is a need in the market, and a need for the veteran community is to stay engaged in all ways possible, to help support a smooth transition from military to civilian life is the best way I can summarize that.
Well, that's a key thing that I have noticed over the years is meaningful employment that pays enough for you to take care of whatever household bills and financial obligations that you've got, and be able to provide you a chance of success. The picture is different for everybody, but something good enough. And I think when it's not there, that is one of those factors that can lead to veterans going down to homelessness, substance abuse issues, or even worse, unfortunately, suicide. It's just one of those things that can go wrong that can cause that. So, that's great stuff that you got out there. It's a great resource. Everybody needs to go check it out. Have no fear. If you're listening or watching, it's in the show notes. It'll be there. All of Joshua's stuff will be there. So, the only thing I had to, that I kind of had a note to ask you about was the power of connections. Is there any places, because you mentioned Veterati, that's a really good one. I don't know if you can go this way or not, but any places out there other than LinkedIn that are great for making those kind of connections?
As far as in person, we could shout out the one example of an initiative that was just started by a group of guys just like me and you, was the Veterans Beer Club. Surprisingly enough, I've got some here in San Diego. I've got some great mentors where they founded. Shout out to Phil Kendro, Kevin Cortez, and Brian Grana, and the whole gang there. They started a networking event at local breweries, and it created chapters nationwide where once a month you can get together and meet in person with other veterans at local breweries and connect for resources and employment and just camaraderie. So it's a simple concept, and usually those simple concepts are the best when it comes to how can you engage with people in person. I think hiring fairs have kind of taken a hit with COVID and everything like that. So you've got virtual events. I would say virtual events. Two of the great, really good ones that I see going on Shout out to 50 Strong and Candy Tillman with promoting the Skill Bridge stuff there, as well as kind of one of the newer in the last couple of years initiatives with Brian Arrington and Vets to Industry doing virtual events. So there's some really good things. I think the Key Mentor, that's a great one as well. So there's a lot that you can tap into. One way that you can stay in tune with those upcoming in-person and virtual events is through my website. There's a virtual and in-person event tab there. And so if you got something going on, let me know so I can help market it to my network. Because I think that, whether I promote it on Instagram to those followers, or I promote it through Facebook and Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups and my LinkedIn network, which I've been building over the years to practice what I preach is, I think, I look to the left and right and we see the programs that they're doing at Google and at Amazon with Bo Higgins and at General Cortez at Microsoft Military. Those are the folks that are trying to, create a talent strategy and optimal program for military transitioning into tech. And I know that for other industries, they're doing the same thing. So it's the same process of, how do we create a transition of these guys who have amazing skill sets, ex-pilots, this and that in the military to, Navy SEALs and all these guys, how do they become, meaningful and purposeful in the employment sector or even as an entrepreneur? Shout out to Bunker Labs, they got a great program for startups for veterans, and I'm one of their San Diego national ambassadors as well. So, we're constantly just, this is the next mission. The next mission is how do we serve the community? How do we serve ourselves based on the resources that we have and those entitlements and benefits that we receive through the VA, and looking at those as an asset that we may need to liquidate for for rent or for buying a house or numerous things. That's something that can still be tribal knowledge kind of across the board. So, but the more of us that are together, if I know the tribal knowledge and you know it and we all know it and we've got platforms, then it less and less becomes tribal knowledge, at least to our brothers and sisters, right?
Absolutely. So once again, I appreciate you coming on here. I've got the your website still down there at the bottom, so people go check them out, follow them on social platforms. All that'll be on there. Matter of fact, I'll go through and I'll put some links to all those other organizations, especially the Veteran Beer Club. I still need to check that out. So I got to figure out what I got to do to get one here in Peoria, Illinois. We do have a nice brewery here, so I'm gonna have to figure that out.
Yeah, launch a chapter out there. I took an example of kind of an initiative from there. I said, hey, these local guys, these mentors to me can start something like that. I can build a organization and a platform. Based on things that I've seen them do, creating a leadership team. And so I started an event series for veteran entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders called Buddy Check and Biz, which are my local events, or I'll do kind of a twist, which is a barracks to boardrooms, which is like just workshops locally. So, hey, if we work in small teams that are very efficient. So, if you're local there, state, you got to work on a local, state, city, county level before you work on a national, and all these things require putting your heads together. But just like with startups, you need a small team of people with some great skill sets, and you can get things done. Just like in the soft community, it doesn't take 50 guys. You got like 3 or 4 people that can essentially get things done in a short amount of time and more efficiently. So kind of using those skill sets and be like, use those tactical skill sets that you might have used from the military and in your experience, and apply them to business, apply them to education, apply them to, creating a nonprofit or volunteering with a nonprofit. That's a huge thing too. A lot of us are plugged in. I know that you've been recognized for your efforts in the veteran advocacy space, and here locally. I was, nominated for and received the Veteran of the Year for San Diego County in December, and I'm really honored to kind of to lead the charge and say, hey, I saw these guys do it. I saw Keith do it. I can do something, to move the needle. It's just a little drops in the bucket, but that's what obviously creates a ripple effect nationwide. So if somebody can tap into what I'm doing and say, hey, like, whether it's LinkedIn and optimization, and you need help with that, or you need to, create a startup, or you want to get into tech, or whatever it may be, I might not be, I might be a start, So I'd love to help out anybody individually or as an organization, advocate, recruiter. I get a chance to work with all these different groups. That's what I love to do. It's not boring because, people are getting out of the military every single day. So, it makes my life pretty packed when it comes to the schedule. But like I said, I get to work on the level of the program management for talent acquisition, all the way down to the individual who wants to, doesn't know which way to go, which I was in the same boat many years ago. And I'm
We've all
sure
been there.
it's like, I got GI Bill now, and I just got out. I don't know what am I going to do next? Should I do my disability? I don't know, blah, blah. But, finding out your next step, I think there's multiple people that have very, very giving hearts for their time and their resources. And I know that what you're doing, even with this podcast, is, shareable media. That's a huge thing. So what I'm saying, I wanted to make sure that it's not specific too much to one organization or resource, because, the strategy that we're talking about here is going to apply for many years to come. LinkedIn's not going anywhere. All the social media marketing's not going anywhere. Personal branding's not going anywhere. So if that's what you need help with for yourself or your organization, I'd love to be a resource to you and anyone that you know.
Awesome. Yeah. Personal branding. I mean, that's actually relatively kind of a new phenomenon, I would say. I got out 10 years ago, probably 8 years ago or so. Kind of heard about Gary Vaynerchuk. He's been really talking about that. He has one heck of a personal brand, just as one person, but he's put a lot of work into building his personal brand. And if you know who he is, you know exactly who he is and what he stands for. And I've seen that, really become a big thing in the last couple of years. And I think tying this all in with LinkedIn is just yet another way where your name can pop up on a Google search. Don't be afraid of that. Like, that's good if you need a job or somebody needs, somebody wants to verify who you are and what you're about. It's like a big poster of, hey, here's who I am, here's what I've done, here's what I've learned, here's what I do, all those different things. So
It's a great way to validate who you are and what you bring to the table. And I think that our collective group as veterans, we know who we are, we know what we stand for, and now we just want to show other people, what we can do, and that's a great way to do that, is to create a personal brand for yourself, for your hiring, strategies, and for your future. People want to know, hey, who's Keith? What does he do? Where does he come from? And you can find a lot of those things just in seconds, right? Just by pulling up the LinkedIn. So whether it's just your profile, which is kind of like your interchangeable thing, or the things that you post, you can, share resources. If you've got to see a post and you like it, share it, put it out there in the network to the people that you know. And so that's going to constantly create a ripple effect across the to somebody somewhere. I'm like, hey, how did you hear about me? It's like, oh, somebody tagged me in the comments and this and that. And like, so eventually, like, you never know, like, who you're going to connect to and what you may come across. And hopefully, like I said, it routes right up to the same resources, and they connect with the people and the resources that they need for themselves individually.
yeah, I'm just going to say, I guess just one more thing, maybe just to tie all of this stuff in with LinkedIn. I just thought of it, and it's a lot like our ribbon racks in the military. If you want to think about it like that, when you're in and you go to a formal event and you see everybody's wearing the ribbon racks, you know who the guys who are just out of basic training. They got one or two. They haven't done anything, but you know what they've done. And then you got the guys who've been in for 20 or 30 years, and they've got, 8, 9, 10 different rows. It's almost going over their shoulder at this point. The guys have been in for 30 years. You know exactly who they are. You know what they've done. They've been successful. They've been doing it for a long time. I'm not saying we should compare ourselves to that, but that's how civilians use LinkedIn. If they find your profile on there, they can tell about you.
Yeah, and you can use the metric for who's on the LinkedIn top voices for LinkedIn itself, and LinkedIn Military is the one that actually is part of that as well. There's a stream for that, so you'll see personal branding experts like Mr. Michael Quinn. You can see he's a great person to look up to when it comes to creating a personal brand and tips on recruitment and things like that. So I think many of the folks that I look up to and have been able to work alongside of are within that list of LinkedIn top voices, and that's just a way of like, hey, multiple people, because your message is not getting out to the 5 connections you have on LinkedIn. It's getting it out there to 50,000 that you have, and that means something if you're actually, what you're saying and what you're posting is actually of value. So put out the free value and share the free value, because essentially, that's what people are gonna going to know you for. So, it comes to not just employment opportunities, training opportunities. They see, I'll post industry news and tips and tricks and different things, and that allows you for people to follow you and essentially not just press the follow button, but actually literally tune into your channel and say, hey, what is this guy gonna, give me next? Give me some nuggets, and I'll do that for my friends and brothers and sisters all day, every day.
Absolutely. Well, once again, Joshua, I appreciate you stopping by and being on here and dropping an absolute ton of knowledge for anybody out there who's looking to dust off the old resume and try and get themselves a job. So I appreciate you being by today.
Absolutely. You rock. Keep doing what you're doing. Looking forward to many more episodes that you're going to be doing with some of our great brothers and sisters out here in the civilian space. Once again, thanks for having me. Find me on LinkedIn. Go to the site below. We'll drop all the links. If you're a young guy, you might go on Instagram. You can find Vetted Talent Network on there as well. So I'd love to. Thanks for having me, brother. I was looking forward to being just a piece of what you're doing, and let's make it happen. Let's help some more vets.
Absolutely, man. It's all about these conversations, just two people as battle buddies, dropping some knowledge, helping some people out. So with that being said, listeners, viewers, make sure you go follow them once again. All that stuff will be in the show notes. As I play the outro here, if you are struggling with anything, please call the suicide number. Everybody else, please make sure that you like and follow the show. Share this episode. Share it with your network. Maybe share it on LinkedIn. Maybe that'd be a good place to do it. And Facebook and all those other places. But maybe on LinkedIn for sure. Get out there and share this. Share the other episodes, because I do all of this just to provide value, education, information to the veteran space. So with that, everybody take it easy.
Rock on. Take it easy.